It is unfortunate that there are people, systems, and institutions that profit when human beings remain afraid, isolated, and perpetually fighting for survival. Fear is powerful. It keeps people consuming. It keeps people divided. It keeps people convinced that everything and everyone is a threat.
One humanity, one hope. One humanity, one home. One humanity, one story. One humanity, one meaning. The home of meaning.
If YouTube's algorithm thought you would enjoy this, and this is your first time here, forget the algorithm for a moment. I am truly glad you are here. Welcome. This is a space where we explore the deep roots of the ideas that quietly shape our lives. The ideas that shape how we understand ourselves, how we relate to one another, and how we make meaning in our lives. Especially so in those seasons when we find ourselves contemplating the deep threads of meaning that bind our shared humanity together. Today we arrive at our final conversation in this little series. Over the last several weeks, we have traveled a long way together. We sat with the Anunnaki of ancient Mesopotamia. We've listened to Sky Woman among the Haudenosaunee. We've reflected on Unkulunkulu in Southern Africa. We've walked alongside Pangu and Nua in ancient China. And we've revisited the stories of the Adams in Genesis. Now, if you've missed any of those conversations, here's what I'll do just for you. I'll leave links to all of them in the description below so you can do a little catching up. And yes, you're welcome. Look, it is one thing to listen to these stories individually. It is quite another to step back and look at them together. And that's exactly what we'll do in our final conversation. You've heard me say time and time again that our shared humanity truly matters. Well, as it turns out, when we place our human cosmologies, our creation stories side by side, there is something beautiful and I think even deeply important worth noticing about that shared humanity. Now, this does not mean that these stories are identical. That's far from it. Their differences matter. But what is fascinating is that most of these differences tell us less about what it means to be human and more about where the storytellers themselves were standing. The landscapes they inhabited, the animals they lived alongside, the political realities they navigated, the questions that pressed most urgently upon their communities. The differences, for the most part, are in many ways the fingerprints of human experience. What they do not erase is our shared humanity. And so, the question that so often gets asked whenever these stories are shared is one of historicity. Questions like, did these things really happen? Did Pangu really separate heaven and earth? Did Sky Woman descend from the heavens? Did the Adams really walk in a garden? I think there are even more relevant and perhaps more urgent questions to ask. What spiritual realities were these communities preserving through the language of story? What wisdom were they trying to pass down? What did they want future generations to remember about being human? So, let's look at some of these threads that run through all of these stories. Threads that I think reveal something beautiful about our shared humanity. The first is this. Every one of these traditions insists that there is more to the human experience than what we immediately see. There is more to being human than simply being human. Again and again, these stories remind us that reality is deeper than our senses alone can grasp. That human life participates in mysteries larger than ourselves. That the world is not merely material, and that our lives are somehow connected to realities that transcend us, even as we participate within them. Now, different traditions describe these realities in different ways, but the intuition itself remains remarkably consistent. Human beings are not simply isolated creatures moving through an indifferent universe. We belong to a larger story. And I think that matters in the world we live in today. Because so many people carry the quiet feeling that they are alone, that they stand isolated in an immense and indifferent universe. Yet, these ancient stories speak with a different voice. They remind us that human beings have always understood themselves as participants in a larger reality, connected to one another, connected to the world around them, and connected in ways both mysterious and profound to something that transcends them. To be human is to belong to a larger story. The second thread that runs through these stories is also just as remarkable as the first. And it is this: creation itself is never portrayed as the enemy of humanity. The language is almost always the language of relationship. Now, remember, the animals carried Sky Woman to safety and even sacrificed for her well-being. The Adams were entrusted with caring for a garden that has already been prepared for them. Noah fashions humanity with loving hands and repairs the heavens so life may continue. Even in Mesopotamia, where humanity is born into labor, the gods create human beings so that life and order might endure. These are stories from entirely different parts of the world. And yet, again, the spiritual intuition remains remarkably similar. The created world is not fundamentally against us. It is not at war with humanity. And I find that deeply interesting, primarily because these communities were no strangers to suffering. They understood, perhaps better than many of us do, that life could be harsh and unpredictable. And yet, Their stories do not conclude that existence itself is against them. Instead, they seem to insist that creation, in its deepest sense, is oriented toward life, relationship, and flourishing. This is not blind optimism. It's not wishful thinking. It is a spiritual diagnosis, and I think a profound one. These stories served as a reminder, a safeguard against moving through life as though we are at war with existence itself. Now, I think that matters deeply in our own time, because I have sat with countless people who feel that everything is against them, that survival is the only goal, that the world is hostile, indifferent, and unforgiving. And to be fair, life can be unimaginably difficult. The ancients knew that just as well as we do. But they also understood that a perpetual posture of warfare is not sustainable. The human soul was never meant to live in a constant state of siege. And look, it is unfortunate that there are people, systems, and institutions that profit when human beings remain afraid, isolated, and perpetually fighting for survival. Fear is powerful. It keeps people consuming. It keeps people divided. It keeps people convinced that everything and everyone is a threat. But the spiritual wisdom passed down by our ancestors pushes back against that narrative. The invitation is not to live in a posture of endless war. It is to learn once again how to belong. The third thread that runs through these stories is that human beings are never passive spectators. Again and again, humanity is given something more than work. They are given a calling, not labor in the modern sense, an exchange of effort for reward, but a labor of love, a way of giving back to a world that has already given so much to them. Like I have said in other discussions, we live in a world where consumerism has become a way of life, where natural resources are stretched beyond their limits, where extraction is often celebrated and restoration is something we discuss at conferences rather than embody in daily life. But our ancestors seem to offer a different rhythm. They remind us that a meaningful life is not measured merely by what we take from the world, but also by what we return to it. That human beings are not simply consumers of creation. We are its caretakers, its cultivators, its repairers. And there is something profoundly human about leaving the world a little more beautiful, a little more whole, a little more life-giving than we found it. The fourth and final thread is that human beings belong to one another. This, I think, may be the most beautiful lesson of all. Across all these traditions, life is never imagined as a solitary project. The atoms are created together. Sky Woman survives because the animals come to her aid. Pangu creates space for others through self-giving, and Nua fashions humanity because solitude itself is not the final vision of the world. Even the Mesopotamian stories, for all their differences, understand human beings as members of a larger community, bound together by shared responsibilities and a common destiny. Again and again, these stories resist the idea that we are made to walk alone. To be human is to belong, to receive life from others, and to give life to others, to carry one another through the difficult seasons that every generation inevitably faces. And I think this matters deeply today because ours is an age of unprecedented connection and at the same time profound loneliness. Our ancestors would likely find that strange. They understood that human flourishing has always been a communal achievement, that wisdom is shared, that burdens are carried together, that meaning itself emerges through relationship. And perhaps that is why these stories still speak to us. Because beneath all their differences, they remind us of something we so easily forget, that none of us arrived here alone, that none of us became fully human alone, and that learning what it means to be human has always been and will always be a journey we undertake together. Now, as we come to the end of this journey, I want to say something important. We have only scratched the surface. There are as many creation stories as there are people, languages, and cultures in this world. And within them lies a well of meaning that continues to give life, wisdom, and perspective to those willing to listen. And as you know by now, this reflection first appeared on Patreon before making its way here. In fact, that's where all our conversations begin their journey. Patreon is also home to our extended reflections, where we sit with some of these ideas a little longer and explore them a little deeper. And today, I would love to invite you into that conversation. Share your own stories. Tell us which traditions shaped you. Tell us which layers of meaning spoke to you most deeply throughout this series. You can connect through Patreon or by visiting the Home of Meaning website. And you know what? Come to think of it, we may even feature some of your reflections the next time we journey this way together. I'll leave the links to everything I just spoke about in the description below. And I genuinely look forward to connecting with you. So, as always, thank you for being here. Because learning what it means to be human together truly, truly matters.
One humanity.